All right. So here we are, 2 of the 3 scoops
Yeah.
for the channel.
Okay. So, are we going back to sandwiches, or are we talking about something else?
Let's move on from sandwiches. I've said my piece on.
You said your piece on sandwiches.
I've spoken my piece on sandwiches.
Okay. So, how about Captain Marvel then?
Okay.
All right. So,
Disclaimer: I have yet to see Captain Marvel. I've dropped the ball.
Okay.
But you have.
I have seen it.
I'm relatively familiar with the comic book character of Carol Danvers, not so much the original Marvel, but your knowledge is extensive. So
I wouldn't call it extensive. No.
For this conversation,
I am. I would say more knowledgeable,
comprehensive, knowledgeable.
Okay. So I began reading Captain Marvel back when she transitioned from Ms. Marvel to Captain Marvel. That was back in around 2012. I can't remember exactly the date. I had just gotten back into reading Spider-Man. I started collecting Avenging Spider-Man, which was a team-up book where...
This was after the death of Peter Parker.
Yes. Okay. So actually it was leading right up to and then also after the death of Peter Parker.
His death spurned you.
Yeah. I had to see what was going on. Okay. So I read into it a little bit, and ultimately I thought the Superior Spider-Man storyline was a cool story.
You actually recommended that to me, and I got into reading it, and that was actually when I had the Marvel app on my phone. Mm-hmm. That was actually a really good run. Yeah, very interesting. There's some definite moments in there where you're like, oh my gosh, you have Doc Ock, in Pete's body doing some pseudo nefarious things, I mean, kind of cringy moments in there. But I mean, any comic, I think, that gets you emotionally invested in the character, even if you hate a character, you're still invested. That's a really well written character or story arc.
Right. And Doc Ock as Spider-Man had that going for him in his Superior run. So it was a very different take on Spider-Man. And so it was interesting. But I wanted to go back before I read all about the death of Peter Parker and all that. I wanted to go back and kind of lead up to that. And so I read Spider Island. I read the issues leading right up to 700, which is where the death takes place. And then I also started reading Avenging Spider-Man as well. That book is where he teams up typically with like some other Avengers. I forget which particular issue, maybe issue 15 or 16, somewhere in there. He ends up teaming up with Carol Danvers, and she has a costume change, which I thought, oh, okay, that's interesting. I liked her costume from before.
So it was like this from the unitard, like one piece swimsuit style with the lightning bolt,
right,
to the new like flight
plus she had the long flowing hair.
And this is kind of her reimagining with the shorter cut and the flight suit, the red and blue kind of model that we've seen now in the movie.
Right.
Okay.
So there's a storyline in there where it seems like Peter Parker and Carol are interested in each other slightly.
Okay. And
so there was this, a little bit of will they, won't they hook up, and ultimately they just decided to be friends. But it was still interesting. It was interesting that they explored that. So
was that a romance that kind of happened over the course of that series, or was it kind of shoehorned in there?
No, well, okay. So I think, and I mean, again, it's been a while since I read that. I read that, back in 2012. Yeah. Here we are 7 years later. So like I said, it's been a while. My memory is a little foggy on that. But it seemed like something that was like, I didn't really particularly feel like it was shoehorned. It was like, they were kind of initially attracted to each other, which I think, sometimes people can tend to be.
They say love at first sight is actually lust at first
yeah,
sight,
right. And so it seemed like they kind of explored it a little bit and ultimately decided it wasn't for them. So, I didn't feel like there was anything wrong with that. So because of that storyline, I decided to go ahead and collect a little bit of Captain Marvel, and it just so happened that that they had just released her standalone book as Captain Marvel.
And we were speaking before the podcast about you as an aficionado. You were collecting the paperbacks, keeping those hermetically sealed in their cases, and then downloading.
Right, I would download also from Comixology the issues as well, and that started to become expensive. But I was
I can imagine.
When you start paying like $10 an issue, or somewhere around there, it becomes a little bit of a problem, I think. But anyway, so I was reading Captain Marvel, and right in the very first book, I think it's got Captain America in there, and they're fighting some stuff, and then ultimately he tells her that she should consider rebranding herself as Captain Marvel, taking on the Captain name. And again, it's been years since I read it, but when I read that issue, immediately it like popped in my mind, they're going to make a movie on this. I knew that that's where they were going with this. Right. And so I was like, I'm on board. I'm along for the ride. I want to see where this goes. So I started reading the issues, and I mean, she was kind of cool. She was snarky. She was definitely strong and independent, and definitely powerful. She's got a cool power set. She flies. She absorbs energy. She shoots energy beams. She's got super strength. She's extremely resilient to damage. She seemed like definitely one of their heavy hitters, like on the level of Thor, if not somewhere around there, more or less. Yeah. Definitely up there.
Yeah. Upper echelon.
Right. And so I thought that was pretty cool. I mean, aside from like it didn't seem like there was very much a Superman style character, so I think she kind of seems like that. I know there's Hyperion, who is basically like carbon copy of Superman, but he was kind of like a lesser, even lesser than Carol Danvers as far as like popularity and how well known he is. I don't think there's a standalone Hyperion book.
Well, there's even, I mean, the problem with the Superman and a few of the DC type characters for me too is always that there's such a black and white image of the world around them, good and evil. There's no gray. There's no Carol Danvers, from the little bit that I'm familiar with her and the stories that I've read that she's appeared in, definitely has more of a varied personality. There's a lot more gray in there, a lot more relatable human emotions, whereas Superman didn't ever really connect with me on that level, even though the power set is extreme, obviously. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of hard to write them into a situation where you're really invested in going, man, are they going to make it out of this one?
Yeah.
But the dynamic of her personality and mix with other Marvel characters, I think, made her more appealing than a Superman type archetype.
Which I absolutely would agree with you until I read a run on Superman called All-Star Superman. So I recommend that for you.
Okay, All-Star Superman. I'll check that out.
So anyway, back to Captain Marvel. So I continued to read it. I thought it was fun. I enjoyed it. I looked forward to it. And I was reading that. I was reading Amazing Spider-Man, Superior Spider-Man, I think is what was currently running. And then I continued on to Amazing when that one ended. I was reading several other different books. I think Jonathan Hickman's Avengers at the time, and New Avengers. I was reading all that. But her book was fun. It was cool. Well, she had an issue going on with her at the time. So it came out that she had brain cancer going on, and the brain cancer would actually become worse whenever she used her flight power. Now, it seemed like her body could regenerate from damage, even cancer, it seemed like. But what that was doing was eating away at her mind. It was, I guess, taking away her memories.
It's kind of like that X-Men Origins Wolverine. Your brain can be destroyed, but the memories, the brain might regenerate, but the memories don't regenerate.
Exactly.
That kind of concept.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So, I thought it was an interest, and it made for some interesting stories because it kind of put a limit on her power. So she wasn't just this all powerful being all the time. She got nerfed a little bit. So she had to kind of rein it in. And then there was also that choice of, do I use that power to save somebody else? And ultimately, she ends up doing just that. She flies, to save lives, and it ends up costing her herself all of who she is. She flies until until it all becomes white. So
it's kind of a more dynamic retcon for her memory,
and that's the part that they lost me. I mean, granted, like I was on board for her being heroic, and really, sacrificing herself. I mean, she can put herself in danger, and basically come out of it, because she's really that strong. But it was when she was sacrificing really all of what was herself, for other people that I thought was really heroic. But that cost her. That was everything that made her who she was. And so that's where they lost me.
What, did they lose you in that actual act, or did they lose you following that up? She didn't have the same personality traits that you come to appreciate about her character. Is kind of like I appreciate the dynamic attempt at a retcon like that, as opposed to just like, oh, now we jump to alternate universe and we're gonna pull this superhero out of this universe, and it's just a whole new blank slate version. They haven't already pre-established. She kind of had to build that back up following that run, right?
Right. So she's had to
develop a personality, essentially.
Yeah.
But you're not impressed by the developing personality.
See, for me, Carol Danvers died that day.
Yeah.
Who she was. I mean, granted, now she's, she evolved into this blank slate, I guess, with all this enormous power. But she was no longer who she was. And I admired who she was. She was the type of person who literally would sacrifice herself for others. And I thought that was admirable.
And following that run, she lost some of that or all of that.
Yeah. And so it made me sad. It unfortunately it turned me off of the character. However, I mean, I thought it was interesting getting to see where they wanted to go with this character. And so knowing what I knew about her power set, knowing what I knew about what her personality was like, I knew that they were going to do a movie with it. Just by telling way back then, what they were doing, it was obvious. So I was still on board, as far as the movies were concerned. After seeing the movie, I'm not as impressed, and that makes me kind of sad because I was initially on board all the way. I remember when you and I went to go see Infinity War.
Yes.
And you were like, you saw the little tease at the end and you're like, what's that gonna do? And I was like, dude, that's Captain Marvel, man. She's freaking really powerful.
I didn't recognize the insignia on Nick Fury's pager.
Right.
Yeah.
I was like, you were
excited.
Oh yeah, I was very excited. But
dropped the ball and lost that momentum. Though.
Yeah. And granted, I mean, there's been obvious issues with the way they marketed it. But that aside, going to the movie, there were some things that I liked. There was some humor in it, but it just seemed like not. It was obvious that it was not their best effort.
Yeah.
I have been in the past really, really excited for each new Marvel movie. I typically go see them on the opening weekend.
Yeah.
Or I try to catch them as soon as I can. If I can get to opening night, I do that. Of course, I've got kids, so that complicates things.
Well, it's hard too. You got to be like Neo, dodging all the spoilers online and
right.
pages I follow, and memes that can spoil the entire movie. And,
right.
Yeah, you got to be careful.
Yeah, and as far as that goes, like the trailers that they released, I don't think they spoiled too much. Like they kept there's I think there is a bit of a twist in the movie that they managed to keep totally concealed, which was good, I thought, because I didn't really see how things were going to go as far as that went. But there were some other things in there that kind of bothered me, mostly with her character. She seemed pretty bland, even though the other characters actually seemed really good. Nick Fury was really good. Coulson was good. I forget what the name of the main Skrull, Talos. He was cool. He was really good. And then what's Jude Law's character's name? He also seemed really, really interesting. And then plus there was more Ronan.
Yeah, it's kind of a precursor to Ronan, seeing how he turned down the path he did.
Right.
From being an honorable Kree, kind of like the path that was taken in Green Lantern by Sinestro. Kind of.
Oh yeah, and then
I thought the story kind of mirrors that. No, former ally.
You know what? I can see
down a dark road.
Yeah,
circumstance and conflict of ideals.
I could see how you could draw parallels between Green Lantern and Captain Marvel. That's an interesting parallel. I think that Ryan Reynolds' Green Lantern was much more charismatic.
Well, I'm not even just necessarily in the cinematic universes, but just those two storylines. The general origin of Sinestro. A former training partner, mentor type figure turned, in conflict with ideals of the leading power, turned down a dark path, that kind of thing, from what I understand, without seeing the movie.
Right.
An interesting perspective I actually got, because I haven't seen the movie, but Mandy, my wife, went and saw it with a friend of hers, and getting an unbiased, not extremely into comics, but slightly familiar with comics. She's an individual that doesn't have a lot of pre-exposure to comics and storylines. Her perception of the movie as a female was that it was kind of preachy. She said the undertones of the message, like, yeah, women can do anything. Her exact words to me were, "Bitch, I already know that. I don't need you to preach that at me." So I thought that was hilarious. She said, despite the kind of cool, some of the action scenes and the great soundtrack, obviously it's being hailed for a great 90s throwback soundtrack.
That's another thing I do want to talk about. And sorry to cut you off.
No, you're fine.
So the soundtrack, the song choices, I think, were really good. The placement of the songs were a little odd. It seemed like, and all of a sudden we're playing a 90s song, and it kind of seemed to come out of nowhere. multiple times.
One of the spoilers I heard too was some of the song choices were a little on the nose. Granted, it's a comic book movie. Granted, it's a kids movie. Granted, it's a Disney property. But some of the song choices, especially for being 90s songs, from what I understand, were kind of on the nose. Like I heard that during the main fight scene, the song that was playing was No Doubt's "I'm Just a Girl,"
which, in my opinion,
pretty on the nose.
And that's fine. But my problem with that song choice is that it completely trivialized that conflict that she was having, because she was in a fight with some other characters that you come to know a little bit in the movie, and it seemed like it should have been a climactic moment story-wise, but the song trivialized that, I thought.
Kind of cut the dramatic
undertones
to that moment. Yeah.
Like it felt like it should have been much more tense, but it ended up feeling more silly.
Well, and that's the reviews that I've read too. Granted, I have not seen. I'll give this disclaimer again. I have not seen the movie, and I intend to before we do our next podcast. So maybe we can revisit a few of these things with more perspective on my part.
Yeah.
But I was told that the movie ranks on a few people's top tens somewhere between Thor: The Dark World and Iron Man 2, which isn't saying terrible things about it, but the average grading I'm getting is around a 60 to 70%, which is average, which is a C.
Okay, you're talking about on the scale of all the MCU movies.
On a scale of 1 to 10, yeah. If we're ranking all MCU movies on a scale of 1 to 10 in comparison with each other. But what I was going to get at is Guardians of the Galaxy does a very similar thing where they have these really good, gritty, raw, intense, emotional moments that make you feel something, and then they undercut it with levity, which is fine if you're trying to, kind of keep it in that realm of kids' movies. Some of those moments are powerful, especially as someone that, grew up reading different comics and stuff, and you have certain connections to characters. Not so much so with the Guardians of the Galaxy, but you have a really dramatic moment, then undercut it with a fart joke, or you have, Bautista coming in there and, as Drax and doing something overtly silly. And that's great to kind of add levity to the moment, but sometimes it does, or even a song choice can undercut that actual emotional impacting moment. And
okay.
Kind of, like you said, trivialize it. And that's disappointing from a big name studio. You would think they would know better.
So you're talking about 10 scales and specific Marvel movies. So let's go ahead and talk about your personal scale then. So you mentioned Guardians of the Galaxy. Out of 10, what would you give that?
The first Guardians of the Galaxy?
Yeah. Let's just talk about specifically the movies that you mentioned. So Guardians of the Galaxy on a scale of 10.
I would give that an 8.
Okay, an 8.
I would give that a strong B, yeah.
Okay, and then Thor: The Dark World.
In my opinion, I actually watched that about 3 months ago, and I didn't see it when it initially came out. It's one of the only Marvel movies I didn't see in theater. I found it very dry. I found it very, I think to quote Tony from the first Avengers movie, Shakespeare in the Park, I would give that maybe a 5.
Okay.
I would give that a 50 percentile rating, which is a fail in my book. It's not something I would ever willingly rewatch.
Okay. And then how about Iron Man 2?
Iron Man 2, I think I'd rate it. I am biased because Iron Man's one of my favorite Marvel properties. But I think I would have to give it just a 60. It's not quite failing, but it's definitely underwhelming, lacks potential, couldn't hone in on one common theme, one common villain. They undercut the Mandarin. They oversold Aldrich Killian.
Okay, I'm actually talking about 2, not 3.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm confusing the two. I'm conflating the two.
Yeah.
Iron Man 2 was Whiplash, was the primary villain, and Justin Hammer. I would say probably the same, probably 60%.
Yeah.
One of those. Why don't I use my repulsor blasters to shoot him directly into his armor? Or why? There are certain things that weren't very fleshed out about his character. I understand. I watched the extended cut on Iron Man 2 or on the DVD that had some deleted scenes, and it gave a little bit more backstory. I think that the character of Whiplash was underdeveloped. Mm-hmm. I thought the portrayal of him was great. But I just was underwhelmed by the storyline, by the plotline, especially as a follow-up to, my opinion, one of the better Marvel movies of Iron Man. I mean, the initial,
Right. Okay, so it'll be interesting to see. So you're ranking Thor: The Dark World at 5, Iron Man 2 and 3 a 6, which you consider 5 a fail, is 6 not a fail?
Well,
6 is
would be
barely passing?
In the 60th percentile. If we're going by like a grading system, it'd be a D.
Okay.
I mean, you're not failing completely because there are some good action scenes in there.
Well, this is your rating system.
Good moments. This is my rating system. Yeah. There are some good moments in there, but I think overall underwhelming. I don't think they made the movie into what it could have been potentially.
Okay.
I think its potential far outweighed what they actually did with it.
And are there any movies in the MCU that you would rate a 10? Or what would be the highest rated movie that you would think to come out of the MCU?
I think just based on the initial soundtrack, delivery, character introduction, the fleshing out of the character themselves, I think Iron Man 1 is definitely a 9. I don't know if I have anything that would be a 10. 10 is perfect. 10 is 100 out of 100. A plus, But I think definitely an A. Iron Man 1, I think, would definitely fall in that category. I think Thor Ragnarok would be a 9 or a 10. I think that'd be, pretty close to probably my top movie. Just for, there's, again, those moments where Taika Waititi, for whatever reason, undercut those serious kind of gritty moments with levity. I don't know if that's because of his background, his directing background, but I thought it was really good. It was really engaging. I think it walked that really fine line between, okay, we have Thor and Hulk, a Norse god and a gamma irradiated Superman, the two of the most comic booky type characters out there, and it walked that great line between reality and suspension of disbelief and mysticism and magic and improbability and space and sci-fi. I think it incorporated so many things that are classically what we think about when we think about comic books. So I would say that was one of the best that did one of the movies that did the best job of meshing those concepts together.
Okay, so would you call that then your highest rated?
Probably that, or Iron Man 1 is my highest rated.
Okay.
What about you?
For me, I mean, definitely, I agree with you on both of those movies. I really enjoyed them. I also really enjoyed Infinity War.
Yeah, no, I would definitely put that right there, 9. Definitely.
Yeah.
Is that a 10 for you? Is that a 9, 8?
It's
I might be
it's tough to say. I might have to rewatch. I don't think I've ever actually. I've seen Infinity War twice in the theater, but I don't think I've rewatched it since in full. So I might have to do that. I've watched Iron Man and Thor Ragnarok multiple times. So barring a rewatch, I mean, right now I would put them even. Would I say that Infinity War was better? Again, might have to watch it again.
Better than
Thor or Thor Ragnarok or
Iron Man 1.
Iron Man, yeah.
Now, one I forgot about that I actually really enjoyed, I would put it at a 9, was Black Panther. I enjoyed Black Panther immensely.
Okay.
I know a lot of people are split on that, but I was in the side of the party that really did enjoy it. I thought overall it was a very good movie.
And
there's a lot of pandering.
I did like it. There were a few things that were annoying. One of the last fight scenes did not look good. And
the one where they're in the vibranium mines, and
right?
Cars,
and
very CGI, almost entirely, and it's noticeable.
Yeah, so that was annoying.
War rhinos.
But you know what?
Into this movie to enrich it, Ron. How about war rhinoceroses? Terrific. Do it.
Right.
Make it happen.
But there was a lot of stuff in there that I really enjoyed too. I really enjoyed what's his sister's name? Shuri.
Shuri. Yeah.
Shuri, okay. I really enjoyed her character.
I think she could be a big Marvel star. I think
Right. I would definitely like to see more of her. And I mean, she was just cool. She was just this, techie,
sassy,
right,
teenage.
and yet she also donned her gear and joined in the fight too.
Yeah.
You know, so it's not like, you know, she's just sitting on the sidelines the entire time. I like that she joined in. But like I said, there were a couple of things that were kind of annoying. But I'm actually I was more prepared to talk about Captain Marvel this time. So going back to that, my personal rating on this movie is pretty low. I would rate it lower than Iron Man 2. I thought Iron Man 2 was much more rewatchable than this. I don't necessarily.
Rewatch value has a big standing on my rating system personally.
Right.
What movies would I not mind or even enjoy rewatching?
Yeah, and Iron Man 2 I have rewatched from time to time. I don't mind that movie at all. I would probably rate it higher than you did. Maybe a 7.5.
Okay.
But
which is a C, right?
Yeah.
Which is on a grading scale. In the
Right.
70s would be average.
Yeah. Yeah, if I was using your rating system, I think that's where I would set it. Which I am.
Where would that stick? Captain Marvel.
So Captain Marvel, maybe I will rewatch it at some point. I don't really feel any necessity to. I guess I would rate it lower than Iron Man 2. I would rate it lower than Thor: The Dark World, which I have also rewatched. And I would probably rate that lower than Iron Man 2, maybe a 6.5 or a 7.
Okay.
But for me, Captain Marvel would be the 5 or lower. I mean, yeah. I mean, there was nothing in there that really stood out to me as being just like so cool that I gotta load that up and check it out again.
Yeah.
The fight scenes were pretty bland. Her character was not very likable. It's kind of weird when you have a movie where like everybody is more interesting than the title character. So yeah, maybe I should rewatch it just to see if my opinion changes at all. But I think it'll be some time before I do that. I'm ready to watch Avengers Endgame.
Oh man, me too, brother. Me too.
So I'm ready to move on with that. Hopefully she's more entertaining and likable in that movie. Otherwise, there's plenty of other characters in it, so it'll be fine.
Yeah.
But
definitely think that it might do something for her character to see her interacting with some of the characters that we're more familiar with.
Maybe.
I enjoy Thor more personally as not a secondary character or a tertiary character, but just as part of a duo.
Yeah.
I think it fleshes him out, lets him express himself more. I think Thor without Loki or without Hulk or someone to riff off of, I think he's a less interesting character. But that being said, when he is part of a duo like that, I think he's a great character. I think he's very strong. Maybe she'll show in the same fashion. Maybe her and Tony Stark, or her and Natasha Romanoff as Black Widow. Maybe she can enter into some relationships that might flesh out a little bit more of her personality or make her a little bit more interesting.
We can hope.
Yeah, we
can hope. I would say if they're going to do a sequel movie for her, please do better. Make me care for her more. Okay. Make the action scenes, I think, more interesting, other than, she just turns into a giant nuke and blows everything up. Give us a sense of danger. Even the Captain Marvel comic book did that in the brain cancer scenario. Yeah. I felt like she was in danger, and ultimately she lost herself. Now I don't know if she ever regained it. I stopped reading after that, but I mean that's where they lost me. So And granted, maybe they did that so that they could run this whole amnesia deal in the movie. And I don't know, like it says right at the beginning of the movie, based on the Marvel comics. And I was like, as I was watching the movie, I'm thinking, which ones?
Yeah.
So if somebody knows of specifically like which comics that they're pulling from, I'm all ears. You know,
yeah.
Please let me know. So
we were saying earlier too, she was lacking a little bit of personality that you would come to expect from Carol Danvers, right? Do you think, in your opinion, there's a concept in Hollywood that like the faceless hero, right? Like picture Keanu Reeves as Neo from The Matrix, devoid of personality, essentially, the most blank slate face, emotionless ever. It's easier for people to imprint themselves onto that character. Do you think maybe that's part of what they were doing with the lack of personality or defining traits in Captain Marvel, so that young girls could imprint themselves onto her, being as she was more of a blank slate? Do you think that's part of the marketing? That's
an interesting point that you bring up. I think that effect works better in video games.
Okay.
I see that a lot in video games where you actually have a character that doesn't speak at all. Because that's supposed to be you. You know, these
the more
things,
blank fields that character has in terms of a personality.
Right. It's like all these things are happening to you, like not avatar. Specifically to that character. And I mean, to be honest, I don't really care for when they do that too much to characters in video games either. I prefer a character that has personality.
As do I. But that being said, movies that have done that, I'll go back to The Matrix again, one of the highest grossing movies of all time, the level of relatability there, having a faceless, nameless, arguably not a poor actor, but you know, I don't think of Keanu Reeves as being the most talented.
So we have now a comparison between Keanu Reeves and Brie Larson. You know,
do you think there's a comparison to be drawn between the two actors?
Okay, so I've rewatched The Matrix many times. Okay, I really enjoy that movie. It's the strongest of the trilogy easily, and it's not even in comparison. But I think even though Keanu is very stoic in that role, and granted, so is Brie Larson. She's very stoic in her Captain Marvel role. I think that like there was this, so it seemed like for Neo, his character was going through this discovery. Okay, and he was never in this position where, you know, he had no memory. It's just that the memory that he had was wrong. I mean, technically, well, so his memories were real, but they were of a fictitious place that was generated. The Matrix.
Yeah, and it's nothing that he ever necessarily, that I saw, went back to and referenced or used as a frame of reference for his personality. It didn't seem like his experiences in the Matrix shaped him very much.
Mm-hmm. Well, you might be right. But I think there were some moments for him that I really enjoyed as part of his character. I really enjoyed him learning martial arts. I really enjoyed his initial jump, the whole jump scenario that they go through.
You'll be able to.
Right. I enjoyed his interactions with the Oracle. I enjoyed his interactions with Agent Smith.
That being said, though, those are all interactions that took
interactions
place
with other characters, right?
Oh, and after his separation from the Matrix.
Right.
You know, those were all moments that helped us come to understand him and defined him as a character in his character, his internal character. But those are things that happened to him upon leaving the Matrix. That's what I'm saying. So he kind of started out at the beginning of the story as a blank slate that you could impose yourself on. And with her memory loss, it's kind of the same thing. Like, grow with me throughout the journey, which is fine.
Except that there's no growth.
For her.
Yeah. So it seems like even though she seems very much to be the same person that she is at the beginning of the movie as at the end of the movie. The only difference along the way is that she discovers who she was and she discovers the truth about what she's been doing. So those are really the only differences. I don't really ever feel like she grew. So whereas Neo most definitely grew. So, I mean, if I were to imprint myself on a character, as you say, then I would want to do so with the aspiration to grow, to become something more. But in this movie, I don't really feel that. It feels like, okay, so technically she ends up, spoiler here, she ends up releasing the one of the limiters on her power. So her power, her full power is unleashed, but that didn't feel like growth, and it also seemed like, if she could just do that, why not just do it the whole time?
Yeah.
So I wondered why, first of all, why she bought into being so limited in the first place. And
that's kind of where, like, what Mandy said came in, why are you preaching to me that I can do anything? And as her personality, like, I need to be told that, like, hey, you're just as good as anybody else and you can pick yourself back up. It's like, yeah, I know. Don't pander to me,
right?
Know? And that's, a movie that did that really well with the blank slate and growing with the character through the experiences is, and granted, the blank slate was a morally just individual, but Captain America.
Right.
First Avenger. I mean, you see him go through and develop, this personality, and you grow with him through his experiences, and he's very much a different person, although the same at the end as he is at the beginning.
Yeah. But
you definitely see character growth, and you see and you see those kind of things that you're saying that this movie with Captain Marvel is just lacking.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I do hope that they do better next time. We've come to expect a high level of quality from these Marvel movies.
Definitely.
That it seems like, the past several movies, they've been knocking it out of the park. But this one just was not there for me. And like I said, maybe I'll feel better after a rewatch, but honestly, at this point, I don't think so. I'm sure I'll probably rewatch it again sometime after it releases on video. I have no desire to go see it in the theater again. Yeah. So, which for me is actually a pretty, that's telling for me, because I went and saw Iron Man 3 multiple times in the theater. I really enjoyed it. I went and saw Doctor Strange multiple times in the theater.
Doctor Strange, yeah.
I went and saw Infinity War multiple times in the theater. I went and saw Thor Ragnarok multiple times in the theater. I think I went and saw Spider-Man a couple of times. So, a lot of these movies I've been going more than once because I'm so excited about it. I really enjoy it that much, but this one just did not. So, and I'm a little sad for that. So,
well, like you said, I think Marvel's really hitting their stride in their, Doctor Strange, Black Panther, Spider-Man, the Avengers movies taking place, in New York with the first one and partially with the second one. These movies are so good at tying together these little microcosms of a universe, the mystical world with Doctor Strange, setting up of Wakanda with Black Panther, fleshing out New York City with Spider-Man, fleshing out San Francisco with Ant-Man. They're getting so good at fleshing out these little separate universes, but then bringing them together for these bigger, collaborative movies that hopefully, they do a better job of that. The cosmic realm, or the not cosmic realm rather, but the the expansive universe with the Guardians of the Galaxy. Hopefully they do more world building with Captain Marvel and fold her in better to the next movie, like you said. Hopefully they take a step back and go, what did we do right? What did we do wrong? And grow from that.
Yeah.
Because I'm not against the character at all. I have no predisposition to dislike, a strong lead female character, which is what I think a lot of the narrative is right now. A lot of, all these men don't like a strong, independent. No, dude, I love Black Widow. I'd love to see a Black Widow solo movie, but she's a fleshed out character. She has a lot of growth. She has so much depth to her, and you can tell that even just from the micro interactions in the movies.
How about a Scarlet Witch?
Oh yeah, Scarlet Witch movie could be interesting as well.
Right, and I mean her power level is like pretty well up there. I mean, she can do some crazy stuff. Like look what she does to the Vision.
Yeah. Well, I get nitpicky too, though. I mean, you remember initially in Avengers Age of Ultron where she's introduced, I mean, she has an accent and then
she kind of
she loses it. Right. Like, no more accent. It's kind of like Storm in the X-Men movies, in the initial trilogy of X-Men movies. I have a thick, African accent, and now it's gone.
Yeah.
Like, man, you really doubled down on that speech therapy between movies, huh? Weird priority.
Well, to be fair, there is a couple of years that pass between. But granted, like I think that
stuff like that really takes me out of the movie, though. It pulls the veil off, and you're going, oh, it
right
uninvests me from the movies. So I get nitpicky with stuff like that. But that could be, I'd definitely be open to seeing origins for her and her brother. And their trials through the experimentation and stuff like that, or if you're going to take her on her own solo route, with the Vision, if they bring him back, in future movies. But
I am excited to hear what your opinion of this movie will be. So I do think that you should go see it just because I want to talk to you about it.
Yeah, well, definitely. I'll have to see it, and we'll have to reconvene once I've seen it and maybe flesh out some more of these ideas. Because basically, I'm talking out my ass right now, and I'm trying to draw parallels between what I can tell from the trailers and from what people have told me in reviews I've watched, and not from any direct personal experience with the movie. So I'll have to give it a chance. I'll have to see it. We'll have to do this again.
Oh, yeah. And I think we'll probably do this again next week. We should have Rob here. He's also seen the movie, and so we can talk about it. And this next time we'll talk full spoilers next time.
Okay.
Since all three of us will have watched it.
Okay.
So I think that's going to be it for us for now. I'm Ron.
I'm Kellen.
Yep, and
this is Three Scoops.
Three Scoops podcast here, and we will talk to you guys later.
Bye-bye.